I didn't realize I was being hidden until the third time it happened. The first time, I brushed it off. Alvin and I had only been seeing each other for about a month, and technically, nobody even knew we were together yet. We met at the gym near my apartment. He was one of those guys everybody noticed without trying too hard. Tall, dark hair always messy like he'd just gotten out of bed, tattoo on his forearm, calm voice that made you lean in closer whenever he spoke. The kind of guy who looked straight until he looked at you a second too long. At first, it was just casual flirting. Little comments. Long stares. Him finding excuses to touch my shoulder when we talked. Then one night after the gym, he asked if I wanted to grab food. That dinner turned into drinks. Drinks turned into him walking me home. And somewhere between standing outside my apartment building at 2 in the morning and him pushing me gently against the brick wall to kiss me, things became very real. After that, we were inseparable. Well, privately inseparable. That's the important part. Because behind closed doors, Alvin treated me like I was his boyfriend already. He'd pull me into his lap while we watched movies. Kiss my neck while I cooked. Fall asleep with his arm wrapped around my waist like he physically couldn't let go of me. But outside? Outside, it was different. The first weird moment happened at a coffee shop downtown. We were sitting together, sharing a muffin because Alvin said mine looked better. And I remember feeling stupidly happy. Like embarrassingly happy. The kind where you catch yourself smiling at your phone afterward because he sent something dumb like, "Miss your face already." Then suddenly Alvin looked up from his coffee and froze. I turned slightly and saw a group of guys walking in. "Shit," he muttered under his breath. "What?" "My coworkers." Before I could even react, he moved. Not dramatically. That's what made it sting worse. He just shifted away from me. His hand disappeared from my knee. His chair moved a few inches farther. His entire body language changed like someone flipped a switch. One of the guys spotted him immediately. "Yo, Alvin!" Alvin smiled fast. Too fast. "Hey!" The guys walked over, loud and energetic, talking about some project at work. I sat there awkwardly holding my coffee while Alvin introduced me. "This is Jacob," he said. "Just Jacob. Not my boyfriend. Not even my friend. Just my name, like I was some random stranger sharing a table because the cafe was crowded." One of the coworkers grinned at me. "You two know each other from somewhere?" My stomach tightened. Alvin answered before I could. "Gym." That was it. Gym. The conversation moved on quickly after that, but I barely heard any of it. I just sat there feeling weirdly embarrassed while Alvin laughed with them like nothing happened. And maybe I was overthinking it. That's what I told myself. Maybe he just wasn't ready yet. Maybe it was too early. Still, the energy changed after they left. Alvin noticed I got quieter. "You okay?" he asked once we were outside. "Yeah. You seem off." I shoved my hands into my hoodie pockets. "You acted weird back there." His expression tightened slightly. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." He sighed immediately, like he'd already had this conversation in his head before. "Jacob, my coworkers don't know about me." The way he said it made my chest sink a little. "About you being bi." His eyes flicked away. "Yeah." I nodded slowly, trying to act understanding even though something sharp twisted in my stomach. "Okay. It's complicated." "Sure." He stepped closer then, lowering his voice. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like I'm ashamed of you." I looked at him for a second because honestly, that was exactly how it felt. But instead I just shrugged. "I didn't say that." Alvin grabbed my wrist gently before I could walk ahead. "Jacob." His voice softened instantly, and that was the problem with him. He knew exactly how to pull me back in. "I like you," he said quietly. "A lot." I hated how fast that made my anger weaken. "I'm just not ready for everybody in my life to know everything yet." I stared at him. The city lights reflected in his eyes, and for a second he looked nervous. Actually nervous. That softened me more than it should have. "Okay," I said finally. And I meant it at the time. I really did. Because the truth was, I was falling for him hard. Hard enough to ignore things I probably shouldn't have. Over the next few weeks, our relationship got more intense. He stayed at my apartment almost every night. Sometimes we'd cook together, sometimes we'd just end up making out against the kitchen counter while our food burned in the background. He was affectionate constantly when we were alone. Obsessively affectionate. Like he couldn't touch me enough. One night we were lying in bed together, tired and half asleep, and Alvin suddenly pulled me closer against his chest. "You know you drive me insane, right?" he murmured into my hair. I laughed softly. "In a good way?" "The worst way." His fingers traced slow circles against my stomach under the blanket. I've never wanted someone this much before. That should have made me feel secure. Instead, for some reason, it made me sad. Because when it was just us, Alvin acted like I was everything. But the second other people entered the picture, it changed. It kept happening. At restaurants, he'd stop touching me if someone walked by. If we ran into people he knew, he'd suddenly become distant. Once, we were holding hands in his car at a red light, and when another car pulled up beside us, he let go immediately. Like instinct. Like fear. That one hurt the most for some reason. I started noticing every little thing after that. And once you notice something, you can't unsee it. The breaking point came about 2 months in. Alvin invited me to a party at his friend's apartment. At first, I was excited because it felt important. Like maybe this was finally him including me in his actual life. I spent way too long getting ready. Pathetic, honestly. I remember changing shirts 3 times while staring at myself in the mirror wondering if I looked good enough. Because somewhere along the line, Alvin's approval had started mattering too much to me. When we got there, the apartment was packed. Music blasting. People drinking everywhere. Somebody yelling from the kitchen. Alvin stayed close to me at first, his hand brushing against my back as we walked inside. Then his friends spotted him. And just like that, he changed again. Not cold. Not rude. Worse. Careful. Calculated. Distant. I stood there awkwardly while his friends talked to him, laughing and pulling him into conversations. A few people introduced themselves to me politely, but Alvin never once clarified who I was. Not once. Then came the moment that finally cracked something inside me. A girl walked over, blonde, gorgeous, clearly very comfortable around him, and immediately wrapped her arms around Alvin's neck. "There you are," she laughed. And Alvin hugged her back. Not casually either. Comfortably. Familiar. My stomach dropped. She looked over at me finally. "Who's this?" There was a tiny pause. Tiny. But I felt it. Then Alvin smiled. "This is Jacob. He's a friend." Friend. I swear I actually felt my heartbeat slow down for a second. Because hearing it out loud after everything between us felt like getting punched in the chest. Alvin looked at me afterward like he expected me to play along. And the worst part? I did. I smiled. I nodded. I acted normal. But inside, something hurt so badly I could barely breathe. And that was the night I started realizing something dangerous. Alvin wanted me. But he didn't want anyone else to know he wanted me. I barely spoke on the drive home. Alvin noticed immediately. He always noticed. "You're quiet again," he said softly, one hand on the steering wheel while the city lights slid across his face. I stared out the passenger window. "I'm tired." "Jacob." There was that tone again. Calm. Careful. Like he already knew exactly what the problem was but wanted me to say it first. I crossed my arms tighter over my chest. "You called me your friend." The silence after that felt heavy. Alvin exhaled slowly through his nose. "Not this again." I turned toward him immediately. "Not this again? I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" His jaw tightened. I could see the tension there even in the dark car. "You know why I did it?" "No, actually, I don't." "That's bullshit." I laughed once under my breath, but there was nothing funny in it. "You know what's crazy?" I muttered. "You act like we're together every second we're alone. But the second another person walks in, I become invisible. That's not fair. Isn't it?" Alvin gripped the wheel harder. "You think this is easy for me?" I looked at him, honestly stunned. For you? Yeah, for me. His voice got sharper. You think I don't feel stressed every second? You think I'm not trying? That party didn't feel like trying. He went quiet after that. The car filled with silence again except for the sound of traffic outside. I hated how emotional I felt. Hated it. Because part of me understood him. I knew coming out wasn't simple for everybody. I knew some people had families that wouldn't accept them, jobs where people talked, friends who changed overnight once they found out. But another part of me kept thinking, then why date me at all? Why pull me this deep into his life privately if publicly I was just some guy from the gym? When we got back to my apartment, I headed inside without waiting for him. Alvin followed right behind me. Jacob, come on. I tossed my keys onto the counter harder than I meant to. I just want one honest answer. You're acting like I lied to you. You did. No, I didn't. I turned toward him. Would you ever introduce me as your boyfriend? His expression changed immediately. Not anger. Not annoyance. Fear. Actual fear. And that hurt worse than anything else. Eventually, he said quietly. Eventually. Not yes. Not of course. Just eventually. I looked away because suddenly I couldn't stand seeing him. Alvin stepped closer carefully like I was something fragile. You matter to me. I laughed bitterly. Privately. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. The apartment felt painfully quiet after that. I walked to the kitchen mostly because I needed space, but Alvin followed me again. Jacob. What? I'm trying. I leaned against the counter and looked at him. He looked exhausted suddenly. Hair messy from running his hands through it too much. Eyes tired. Hoodie sleeves shoved up his forearms. And the worst thing about Alvin was that even when I was angry at him, I still wanted him. Still wanted him to touch me. Still wanted him to pull me close and tell me I mattered more than this. I don't know if I can do this forever, I admitted quietly. Something flickered across his face. You won't have to. How do you know? Because He stopped himself. What? His eyes met mine finally. Because I'm in love with you. Everything inside me froze. Alvin wasn't the kind of guy who said emotional things casually. In fact, getting him to talk about feelings at all usually felt impossible. But this sounded terrifyingly real. I stared at him. What? His voice dropped lower. I love you. My chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. And God, I wish he hadn't said it then. Because hearing those words after feeling rejected all night completely wrecked me. I looked away fast, trying to steady myself emotionally, but Alvin stepped forward and grabbed my waist gently. Look at me. I did. His expression looked almost panicked now. I know I'm messing this up, he admitted. I know I am. But you have to understand something. What? I've never done this before. I frowned slightly. Dated a guy? He nodded once. And it scares the shit out of me. There it was. The truth underneath everything. Not shame exactly. Fear. Fear of people knowing. Fear of changing how the world saw him. Fear of losing whatever version of himself he'd spent years building. And somehow understanding that made me soften even though I didn't want to. Alvin touched my face carefully. But none of that changes how I feel about you. His thumb brushed my cheek slowly. And I hated how fast my body reacted to him. Always him. Always. You make me happy, Jacob. His voice sounded almost frustrated now, like he didn't know how to explain himself properly. You make me feel calm. You make me want things I've never wanted before. I swallowed hard. Then why does it feel like you're ashamed of me? Alvin looked genuinely hurt by that. I'm ashamed of myself, he admitted quietly. That shut me up immediately. The honesty in his voice hit harder than I expected. For a second neither of us moved. Then Alvin suddenly pulled me against him. Tight. Desperate almost. His face buried against my neck while his arms wrapped around my waist. I'm trying, he whispered again. And this time I believed him. That was the problem. I believed him too much. My hands slowly gripped the back of his hoodie, and I felt him exhale against my skin like he'd been holding his breath waiting for me to pull away. "I hate fighting with you," he murmured. "You started it." That made him laugh softly against my neck. "There he is." I rolled my eyes even though he couldn't see it. Then Alvin kissed me. Slow at first. Careful. Like he was trying to apologize without words. And somehow those kisses always destroyed my ability to stay angry. His hands slid under my shirt, warm against my skin, and I felt my heartbeat immediately speed up. "You're beautiful when you're mad," he whispered against my mouth. "Shut up." He smiled slightly. "No." Then he kissed me again, harder this time, backing me against the kitchen counter. Everything with Alvin always felt intense once we touched. Like all the emotions we avoided saying out loud came out physically instead. The frustration. The wanting. The fear. I could feel all of it in the way he held me. His forehead rested against mine afterward while both of us breathed hard. "I'm serious about you," he said quietly. I nodded once even though part of me still hurt. "I know." And I did know. That was what made the whole situation so confusing. Because Alvin loved me. I was sure of that now. But somehow love still wasn't enough for him to stop hiding me. A week later, things got worse. It happened on a Friday night. Alvin texted me around 8 asking if he could come over after work. I told him yes, obviously. By then, despite everything, seeing him still felt like the best part of my day. He showed up looking exhausted. The second I opened the door, he leaned down and kissed me hard before even saying hello. "Long day?" I asked once we pulled apart. "You have no idea." I laughed softly and let him inside. He dropped onto my couch dramatically while I ordered food for us. For a while things felt normal again. Easy. We ate takeout in sweatpants while some dumb reality show played in the background. Alvin kept pulling me closer until eventually I was half lying against his chest. Those moments were dangerous because they made me forget everything else. Made me believe maybe we'd figure it out eventually. Then Alvin's phone rang. I felt his entire body tense underneath me. He grabbed his phone quickly when he saw the screen. "Shit." "What?" "My brother." That surprised me because Alvin almost never talked about family. "You gonna answer?" He hesitated. Then nodded once and stood up immediately. But instead of answering in front of me, he walked into the hallway outside my apartment. I stared at the closed door in confusion. At first I told myself maybe he just needed quieter space. But then I heard it. His voice. Lower than usual. Careful. "No, I'm not busy." Something cold settled in my stomach instantly. Because I knew that voice now. That was the voice Alvin used whenever he was pretending I didn't exist. I sat there staring at the apartment door while Alvin talked outside. At first, I tried not to think too much about it. But then I heard him laugh. Not his real laugh. That fake easygoing one he used around other people. "Yeah, I've just been chilling," he said through the door. My chest tightened immediately. Because he wasn't just hiding details anymore. He was hiding me. I muted the TV and listened before I could stop myself. "Tomorrow?" "Yeah, probably. Depends what the guys are doing." A pause. Then, "No, nobody's here." That one hit like a punch. Nobody's here. I stared down at my hands while something ugly twisted in my stomach. It was such a small sentence. But hearing it out loud made me feel stupid for every excuse I'd made for him. I suddenly felt embarrassed sitting there in his hoodie while our half-finished dinner sat on the coffee table. Like I was some secret he packed away whenever real life called. The apartment door opened a minute later. Alvin walked back inside casually, still looking at his phone. Then he saw my face. And stopped immediately. "What?" I looked at him for a second before answering. "You told him nobody was here." His expression changed instantly. "Jacob, you literally stepped outside to pretend I didn't exist. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" He rubbed his hand down his face hard. "My brother doesn't know about me." There it is again. His eyes flashed with frustration. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to stop acting like being with me is something shameful." "It's not shameful." "Then why are you hiding it?" Alvin opened his mouth, then shut it again. That silence hurt more than yelling would have. I stood up from the couch quickly because suddenly sitting there felt unbearable. "You know what the worst part is?" I said quietly. "I actually believe you love me." His expression softened immediately. "Jacob, but every time this happens, I feel pathetic for believing it." "That's not fair." I laughed bitterly. "You keep saying that. Because you're acting like I'm trying to hurt you. Aren't you?" "No." His answer came fast. Immediate. And somehow that almost made it worse. Because I knew he meant it. Alvin wasn't cruel. That was the problem. He genuinely didn't understand how deeply this affected me. To him, hiding was survival. To me, it felt like rejection. "I just need time," he said quietly. I shook my head. "Time for what?" He looked exhausted suddenly. "To figure myself out." "And what happens to me while you do that?" His jaw tightened. "You act like I don't care about you. You care about me privately." I snapped. The silence afterward was brutal. Alvin stared at me for a long second before speaking again. "You think this is easy for me because I don't talk about it," he said quietly. "But you have no idea what's going on in my head." "Then tell me." His eyes flicked away instantly. That alone answered everything. Alvin kept everything buried so deep it was almost impossible to reach him emotionally sometimes. Even now, standing in front of me looking upset, he still held himself back. I crossed my arms tightly. "What are you so afraid of?" That question landed hard. I saw it immediately in his face. Alvin looked away toward the kitchen like he physically couldn't answer while looking at me. "My dad," he admitted finally. I frowned slightly. "What about him?" "He'd lose his mind." The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. "He's intense," Alvin continued quietly. "Always talking about what a man should be. What's normal? What isn't?" Something in my chest softened despite myself. "I spent my whole life trying to be the version of me everybody expected," he said. "Then you showed up and ruined it." I blinked at him. "That's supposed to be romantic?" His mouth twitched slightly despite the tension. "You know what I mean." I did. Unfortunately, I did. Alvin stepped closer slowly. "I'm terrified all the time lately." His voice had gone softer now. "Honest." "Because?" "Because I want you more than I want the life I built before you." That shut me up completely. He looked wrecked saying it. Like admitting it out loud physically hurt. "And that scares me," he whispered. For a second neither of us moved. Then I sighed quietly and leaned back against the counter behind me. "I don't want to pressure you into coming out," I admitted. "I really don't." Alvin nodded once. "But I also don't know how long I can keep feeling invisible." His eyes closed briefly at that. Like hearing it hurt him. "I know." The apartment felt painfully quiet. Then Alvin walked over slowly until he stood directly in front of me. His hands slid carefully around my waist. "You're not invisible to me." I looked up at him. "That's not enough anymore." His face tightened immediately. And for the first time since we started dating, I saw something close to panic in his expression. Real panic. Like he thought he might actually lose me. "Don't say that." "It's true. Jacob. I mean it." His grip on my waist tightened slightly. "You think I don't picture a future with you?" That surprised me enough to stay quiet. Alvin looked frustrated now, like the words were fighting their way out of him. "I think about you constantly," he admitted. "About waking up next to you every day. About getting an apartment together eventually. About stupid shit like grocery shopping and arguing over furniture." My chest tightened painfully. Because he sounded sincere. Completely sincere. "I've never wanted a real relationship before," he said quietly. "Not like this." "Then why does it feel one-sided?" "It's not one-sided. It feels like I'm the only one risking anything." That hit him hard. I saw it instantly. Because deep down, he knew I was right. I was already openly gay. My friends knew. My coworkers knew. My family knew. Being with Alvin didn't threaten my identity. But being with me threatened his. And that imbalance was slowly destroying us. Alvin let go of my waist finally and stepped back. The distance between us suddenly felt awful. I don't know how to fix this overnight, he admitted quietly. I know. But I don't want to lose you either. That one hurt. Because I believed him. Again. Always again. I walked toward the couch and sat down heavily, emotionally exhausted. A second later, Alvin sat beside me. Not touching me at first. Just sitting there quietly. Then finally. I've never told anybody this before. I glanced at him. His eyes stayed fixed ahead. When I was 16, my dad caught me looking at a guy. I frowned slightly. What happened? Alvin laughed once under his breath, but there was no humor in it. He didn't talk to me for a week. My stomach dropped. He kept making comments after that. About gay people. About disappointment. About sons embarrassing their families. Jesus. I learned pretty fast to shut that part of myself off. His voice sounded distant now. Detached. Like he hated even talking about it. And then I met you, he murmured. I looked over at him quietly. You make me forget how to hide. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Because suddenly I understood the contradiction that was Alvin. He wasn't hiding me because I meant nothing. He was hiding me because I meant too much. And somehow that almost hurt worse. Alvin finally looked at me then. I know I'm failing at this. You're trying. Not enough. I didn't answer because honestly, I didn't know anymore. He leaned closer slowly until his forehead rested against mine. I love you, he whispered again. 3 words. Simple. Dangerous. Because every time he said them, they wrapped around my heart tighter. And that was exactly why I was scared. Because if Alvin never changed, I already knew I'd stay anyway. Things were good for a little while after that conversation. Not perfect. But softer. Like we were both trying harder not to hurt each other. Alvin started staying over almost every night again. He'd come home from work exhausted, kick his shoes off by my door, then immediately pull me into his arms like being close to me fixed something in him. And honestly, being close to him fixed things in me too. That was the dangerous part. Because even after all the hiding, all the frustration, all the moments that left me feeling small, one kiss from him still made everything blur around the edges. One night we were lying on my couch watching some terrible horror movie either of us was paying attention to. I was stretched out against his chest while Alvin lazily played with my fingers. You're distracted, I murmured. You haven't looked at the TV in like 20 minutes. He pressed a kiss against the top of my head. Maybe because I like looking at you more. I rolled my eyes immediately. That was painfully cheesy. You loved it. Unfortunately, I did. I smiled despite myself, and Alvin noticed instantly. There it is, he said quietly. What? That smile. His hand slid along my waist slowly underneath my shirt. It kills me. I tilted my head up just enough to look at him. You're dramatic. I'm serious. His voice had gone softer now. Intimate. The kind of tone that always made my stomach tighten. Alvin looked at me like I was something important. Something dangerous. Something he still couldn't believe he was allowed to have. Then he kissed me slowly. The movie kept playing in the background while his hand moved up my side carefully, fingers warm against my skin. Every kiss with him felt emotional somehow. Like there was always something unspoken underneath it. Wanting. Fear. Need. His forehead rested against mine afterward while both of us breathed quietly. I miss you today, he murmured. You saw me this morning. Still. That made my chest ache a little. I reached up and brushed my fingers through his hair gently. You're clingy lately. Alvin gave me a tired smile. Maybe because you're the only place I feel relaxed anymore. That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. Because over the next couple weeks, I started noticing how tense he seemed outside my apartment. Always checking his phone. Always distracted. Always looking over his shoulder in public like he expected something bad to happen. At first I thought it was work stress. Then one Friday night, I found out it wasn't. We were at a grocery store near my place around 10 at night because Alvin insisted we needed real food instead of takeout for once. He was pushing the cart, while I grabbed random things we definitely didn't need. "Why are you buying cookie dough?" he asked. "Because adulthood is meaningless." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer." He laughed under his breath and shook his head. God, I loved making him laugh. Even small laughs felt rewarding with Alvin because he wasn't naturally expressive. Most people probably thought he was intimidating before they knew him. But I knew the softer parts. The sleepy version of him that buried his face against my neck in the mornings. The version that absent-mindedly touched me every few seconds while we watched TV. The version that looked at me like I mattered. We turned down another aisle, and I was reaching for cereal when Alvin suddenly stopped walking. Completely stopped. I looked back at him. His entire body had gone tense. "What?" His eyes were fixed ahead. Then I followed his gaze. A man stood near the end of the aisle pushing a shopping cart. Older. Broad shoulders. Same dark hair as Alvin. My stomach dropped immediately. His dad. I knew instantly somehow. Alvin looked almost pale. "Shit," he muttered quietly. The older man hadn't seen us yet. But Alvin was already panicking. "Come on." He grabbed the cart immediately and turned it around fast. Too fast. I stumbled slightly trying to keep up. "Alvin!" "Not now." His voice came out sharp. Nervous. We moved quickly through the store while Alvin kept his head down. And suddenly I understood something horrifying. He wasn't just scared of his dad knowing. He was terrified of it. We reached a quieter section near the frozen foods. Alvin stopped finally, breathing hard like we just run a mile. "Hey," I said carefully. "It's okay." "No, it's not." His hands gripped the shopping cart tightly enough that his knuckles turned pale. "You saw him for 2 seconds," I said softly. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." He looked away immediately. "I can't." There it was again. Walls. Always walls. I stepped closer carefully. "Alvin. He can't find out about us." The way he said it made my chest hurt. Not because of the words. Because of the fear underneath them. "What happens if he does?" Alvin laughed bitterly under his breath. "You really think he'd accept this?" I stayed quiet. Because honestly? No. I didn't think he would. Alvin rubbed his hand over his face roughly. "He already thinks I'm a disappointment." "That's not true. You don't know him." His voice sounded cold suddenly. Detached. Like he'd slipped emotionally somewhere far away. I reached for his arm carefully. "Hey!" He looked down at my hand instantly. And for one awful second, he moved away from me. Like instinct. Like someone might see. The second he realized he'd done it, his expression crumpled slightly. "Jacob!" But it was too late. That tiny movement hurt more than it should have. I stepped back slowly. "It's fine." "It's not fine." I said it's fine. Alvin stared at me with obvious regret, but neither of us knew how to fix the moment now that it had happened. The tension stayed heavy between us all the way through checkout. Then on the drive home, Alvin barely spoke. I watched the city lights outside while silence filled the car. Finally, quietly, I asked, "Have you ever dated a guy before me?" "No." "Ever been involved with one?" A pause. "Yes." Something tightened in my chest. "Did they know you were hiding them too?" Alvin's jaw clenched. "Jacob. It's a question." He exhaled slowly. "I never cared about anybody before you." I looked over at him. "I'm serious," he added quietly. "Those other guys meant nothing." That should have made me feel better. Instead, it just made me sad again. Because I realized something then. I wasn't some casual secret anymore. I was the person he loved. And he was still hiding me. When we got back to my apartment, I headed inside first. Alvin followed quietly behind me. The second the door shut, he grabbed my wrist gently. "Don't shut down on me." I avoided his eyes. "I'm trying not to." "I'm sorry." That surprised me enough to look up. Alvin almost never apologized directly. "I didn't mean to pull away from you back there." "But you did." "I know." His face looked exhausted. Ashamed. And suddenly I felt guilty for being angry because honestly, He looked miserable too. I just panicked, he admitted quietly. Why? You know why. I swallowed hard. The vulnerability in his expression made it impossible to stay cold for long. God, I hated that. I don't want to be your fear, I whispered. That visibly hurt him. You're not. Then what am I? Alvin stepped closer slowly. You're the only real thing in my life right now. My chest tightened painfully. His hands slid around my waist carefully. I know I keep screwing this up, he murmured. But losing you would destroy me. I looked up at him quietly. And the worst part? I believe that too. After that night at the grocery store, something shifted between us. Not in a dramatic way. Worse. Subtly. Like we were both becoming more aware of the problem, but neither of us knew how to fix it anymore. Alvin got clingier when we were alone. Almost desperate sometimes. He'd show up at my apartment and immediately pull me into his arms before even taking his shoes off. He slept wrapped around me every night like he was scared I'd disappear if he let go for too long. But outside? The fear kept getting stronger. And now that I'd seen it clearly, I couldn't stop noticing it. One Saturday afternoon we were walking downtown after getting lunch together. It was warm outside, crowded sidewalks, people everywhere. Alvin had his sunglasses on, and his hood pulled slightly up even though it wasn't cold. You look suspicious, I joked lightly. He smirked faintly. Maybe I am suspicious. I bumped my shoulder against his. There's the criminal energy I fell for. That earned a real laugh. Small, but real. For a minute things felt normal again. Then instinctively, without thinking, I reached for his hand. The reaction was immediate. Alvin jerked slightly and looked around before quickly pulling away. Not aggressively. Just fast. Automatic. But it still felt horrible. My stomach dropped instantly. Oh, I muttered quietly. Alvin's expression changed the second he realized what he'd done. Jacob. It's fine. It was reflex. I looked ahead instead of at him. Yeah. I know. He stepped closer immediately, lowering his voice. Don't do that. Do what? Shut down. I laughed softly under my breath. You literally flinched because I touched your hand. That's not what happened. It kind of is. Alvin rubbed his jaw in frustration. There are people everywhere. And? His eyes met mine. And I panic. The honesty in his voice shut me up again. God. Every time I wanted to stay angry at him, he'd say something painfully honest and ruin it. We kept walking after that, but the mood had changed completely. I could feel the distance between us now even though we were inches apart. Finally Alvin sighed heavily. Come back to my place tonight. That surprised me immediately. I'd only been to his apartment twice before. And both times had been late at night when his roommate wasn't home. You sure? Yeah. His answer came fast. Almost impulsive. Like he needed to prove something. So later that night, I followed him home. Alvin lived across town in a nicer apartment building than mine. Modern kitchen, huge windows, expensive furniture that looked too clean to actually belong to someone. His roommate apparently stayed with his girlfriend most weekends, so the place was empty when we walked in. The second the door closed behind us, Alvin grabbed my waist and kissed me hard. Like he'd been holding himself back all day. His hands slid into my hair while he pushed me gently against the wall near the kitchen. I hate fighting with you, he murmured against my mouth. We fight constantly. Yeah. That's probably unhealthy. Probably. Despite everything, I smiled a little. Alvin noticed instantly. There you are. Shut up. He kissed me again, slower this time. The tension from earlier slowly melted away while his hands moved carefully over my body like he was trying to memorize me. That was how Alvin loved. Intensely. Completely. Like once we were alone together, nothing else existed. Eventually we ended up on his couch tangled together under a blanket, while some random movie played untouched in the background. I rested against his chest listening to his heartbeat, while Alvin played absently with my fingers. Then quietly, almost too quietly, he said, My mom would probably like you. I looked up immediately. What? He shrugged slightly but avoided my eyes. She likes calm people. My chest tightened. It was such a tiny sentence. But it felt important somehow. Because Alvin almost never talked about imagining me inside his real life. You think about that? I asked softly. His fingers paused against mine. All the time. Something warm spread through my chest. I tilted my head up to look at him better. Then why does it feel impossible for you? Alvin stayed quiet for a long moment. Then finally. Because once people know, everything changes. His voice sounded distant again. Careful. I've spent years pretending to be somebody else. I frowned slightly. You mean straight? He nodded once. And now? His eyes met mine finally. Now I don't know who I am anymore. That hurt to hear. Because I knew exactly what he meant. Alvin had built his entire identity around being the version of himself people accepted. Tough. Masculine. Safe. Predictable. And loving me threatened all of it. I touched his face gently. You're still you. His expression softened instantly. You make it sound simple. It should be simple. He laughed quietly. You've never met my family. Something about the way he said that made my stomach tighten. Before I could ask more, his phone buzzed loudly on the coffee table. Alvin glanced at the screen. And immediately tensed. I saw the contact name before he grabbed the phone. Dad. The room went silent instantly. Alvin stared at the screen like it was something dangerous. You don't have to answer, I said carefully. He hesitated. Then shook his head once. I should. He stood up and walked toward the kitchen. Again. Away from me. I stared down at the blanket, while that familiar sick feeling crept into my chest. Not again. Please not again. Alvin answered quietly from the kitchen. Hey. A pause. Then his voice changed. Lower. Guarded. The version of him I hated. I couldn't hear everything this time, just pieces. Yeah. No, I'm home. Another pause. Then. By myself. That one hit anyway. I closed my eyes briefly. Even now. Even here. He was still doing it. The conversation lasted maybe 3 minutes before Alvin came back looking tense. He sat beside me carefully. Neither of us spoke at first. Then finally I asked, Does lying about me ever make you feel bad? His face fell instantly. Jacob, it's a real question. Alvin looked down at his hands. Yes, he admitted quietly. The honesty surprised me. Every single time. Something in my anger weakened hearing that. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I hate myself after almost every phone call lately. My chest tightened. Then stop doing it. It's not that easy. Why? Alvin laughed bitterly under his breath. Because if I tell my dad the truth, there's a good chance I lose him. The vulnerability in his voice made me stay quiet. He loves me conditionally, Alvin admitted softly. As long as I stay the version of me he understands. I swallowed hard. And if you don't? Alvin looked at me finally. Then I become something he can't accept. The apartment suddenly felt painfully quiet. Then he said something that completely broke my heart. I don't know how to choose between you and my family. I stared at him. Because deep down, that was the first time he'd admitted there was actually a choice happening at all. I didn't know what to say after that. I don't know how to choose between you and my family. The sentence just sat there between us. Heavy. Painfully honest. Alvin looked exhausted after admitting it, like the words physically drained him. And honestly, part of me appreciated the honesty. Because at least now I understood the real problem. It wasn't that Alvin didn't love me enough. It was that loving me cost him something. Maybe everything. I leaned back slowly against the couch cushions and stared at the dark TV screen across the room. That's a horrible feeling to hear as your boyfriend, I admitted quietly. His face tightened instantly. I know. No, I don't think you do. Alvin rubbed both hands over his face. Jacob, I'm serious. My voice stayed calm somehow. Do you know what it feels like hearing the person you love say they're struggling to choose you? You think I want this? No. But it's still happening. Silence. Thick and uncomfortable. Then Alvin shifted closer suddenly. You make it sound like I'm going to leave you. I looked at him carefully. Aren't you? That question hit hard. I saw it immediately in his expression. Fear. Real fear. Don't, he said quietly. Don't what? Talk like that. I swallowed hard. Then tell me I'm wrong. Alvin opened his mouth. Then stopped. And honestly? That hurt more than any answer could have. Because he couldn't promise me. Not fully. Not yet. I stood up slowly from the couch because suddenly I couldn't breathe in that apartment anymore. Jacob. I need a minute. He followed me immediately into the kitchen. You're leaving? I don't know. His face actually fell hearing that. And for the first time since we started dating, Alvin looked genuinely terrified. Not scared of his family. Not scared of being outed. Scared of losing me. You can't just walk out. I laughed softly under my breath. Watch me. Jacob, stop. Stop what? Punishing me. That made me turn around fast. Punishing you? His jaw tightened immediately like he regretted the wording. That's not what I meant. No, apparently it is. Alvin sighed hard in frustration. I'm trying to explain myself and everything comes out wrong. Maybe because there isn't a right answer. The apartment went quiet again. Then suddenly Alvin stepped forward and grabbed my wrist gently. Look at me. I did. His eyes looked wrecked. I love you, he said again, voice rough this time. I need you to understand that first. My chest tightened painfully. Then why does this feel so temporary? That question destroyed whatever composure he had left. I watched the emotion hit his face instantly. Because he'd been thinking the same thing. I don't want temporary with you, he admitted quietly. Then what do you want? His hand tightened slightly around my wrist. You. My throat felt tight suddenly. Fully, he continued. Completely. I want all of this. Then why are we stuck? Alvin looked away briefly before answering. Because I'm scared. There it was again. Always fear. Fear wrapped around everything between us. I leaned against the kitchen counter tiredly. What exactly are you scared will happen? He laughed bitterly. You really want the list? Yes. Alvin stayed quiet for a second. Then finally. My dad stopped speaking to me. My chest tightened. My brother looks at me differently. Another pause. I lose friends. His voice sounded smaller now. Weirdly enough, that's not even the worst part. What is? Alvin looked at me then. That people stop seeing me as me. I frowned slightly. What does that mean? He struggled with the words for a second. Right now I walk through the world normally. Nobody questions me. Nobody judges me. Nobody looks at me differently. His eyes dropped toward the floor. But the second people know I'm with you, suddenly that becomes the first thing they see. The honesty in that hurt. Not because he was wrong. Because I understood exactly what he meant. I'd lived it already. The subtle shift in people once they know. The assumptions. The judgment. The weird curiosity. The way some people suddenly reduce your entire identity to one thing. You think I don't know that feeling? I asked quietly. Alvin's expression softened immediately. I know you do. Then why does it feel like you're ashamed I survived it better than you? That visibly hit him hard. I'm not ashamed of you. Then stop making me feel hidden. He looked like he wanted to answer. But before he could, his phone buzzed again on the counter. Both of us looked down automatically. Dad. Again. Alvin froze. The tension in the room immediately changed. Don't answer, I said quietly. He hesitated. The phone kept vibrating. And suddenly I realized something awful. He looked more afraid of ignoring the call than answering it. Alvin grabbed the phone slowly. I have to. Something inside me cracked hearing that. Not because of the call. Because of the automatic obedience in his voice. Like he still belonged more to his father than himself. He answered quietly. Hey. I turned away before I had to hear the rest. I walked toward the huge windows overlooking the city while Alvin spoke softly behind me. And then I heard it. His father's voice. Loud enough through the speaker for me to catch pieces. Coming to dinner tomorrow? Alvin glanced toward me instinctively. Then away. Yeah, he answered. A pause. Then his dad laughed about something before saying, Bring that girl you were talking to. I felt sick instantly. Alvin closed his eyes briefly. There's no girl. What happened to that blonde from the gym? Jim. My stomach twisted. He'd lied about some random woman to cover me. Of course he had. Didn't work out, Alvin muttered. His dad laughed again. Good. She looked high maintenance. I stared out the window silently while anger and heartbreak twisted together in my chest. Then came the sentence that ruined me. You need to settle down soon, his father said. Find a wife. Start acting serious. Wife. I looked down at the city lights below while something inside me quietly broke. Because suddenly I understood the full reality of this situation. Alvin's family didn't just expect him to hide me. They expected a completely different life for him. A wife. Kids. Normal. And maybe the worst part. A piece of Alvin still wanted their approval badly enough to try. The call ended a minute later. The apartment stayed silent afterward. Then quietly behind me. Jacob. I didn't turn around. Did you ever think maybe this won't work? The silence after that felt endless. Then finally Alvin answered. No. His voice sounded immediate. Certain. I turned then. And the look on his face almost wrecked me completely. Because he looked terrified. Like even hearing the possibility out loud physically hurt him. I think about losing you constantly, he admitted quietly. It's the one thing that scares me more than any of this. My chest tightened painfully. He stepped closer slowly. I know I'm failing you right now. I swallowed hard. But I don't know how to become a different person overnight. For a second neither of us moved. Then I asked the question I'd been avoiding for months. If your dad gave you an ultimatum, what would you choose? Alvin froze completely. And suddenly the entire room felt too quiet. If your dad gave you an ultimatum, what would you choose? Alvin froze. Completely. And honestly? That hesitation told me everything before he even spoke. The apartment suddenly felt painfully quiet. I watched his expression carefully while he stared at me like he was trying to survive the question instead of answer it. Jacob. His voice sounded wrecked already. I crossed my arms tightly over my chest. You can answer honestly. That's not a fair question. I laughed softly under my breath. There it is again. What? Every time something gets too real, suddenly it's unfair. His jaw tightened immediately. You know it's more complicated than that. No, I said quietly. I think it's actually very simple. The silence stretched. Then finally Alvin said the words I think he'd been avoiding this entire relationship. I don't know. That hurt more than I expected. Not because it surprised me. Because hearing it out loud made everything real. I nodded slowly while something heavy settled in my chest. Okay. Alvin's face changed immediately. What does that mean? It means I finally understand. Jacob, don't what? Look at me like that. I frowned slightly. Like what? Like you're already leaving. The panic in his voice hit me hard. But I was too emotionally exhausted now to soften immediately like I always did. You said you don't know if you'd choose me. That's not what I said. It literally is. I said I don't know what I'd do in that situation. Same difference. Alvin dragged a frustrated hand through his hair. You think this is easy for me? No, I admitted quietly. I think it's destroying you. That shut him up instantly. Because he knew I was right. I stepped away from the window and grabbed my hoodie from the couch. Jacob. I should go home. You are home. The sentence slipped out so naturally that both of us froze afterward. Alvin looked stunned by his own words. And somehow that made this harder. Because I knew he meant it. To him, I was home. Privately. Behind closed doors. In secret. But not in the real world. I swallowed hard. You love me, I said quietly. I know you do. Then stop acting like this. But love isn't the problem anymore. Alvin stared at me silently. The problem is that you're asking me to wait while you decide if I'm worth losing everything else for. His expression cracked completely after that. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. And honestly, that was the moment I knew. Not because he didn't love me. Because he still wasn't ready. Maybe one day he would be. But not now. And loving someone who hides you eventually starts hurting more than losing them. Alvin walked toward me slowly. You can't leave right now. His voice sounded desperate now. Raw. I don't know what else to do, I admitted. Stay. Alvin. Please. That word almost destroyed me. Because Alvin never begged for anything. Ever. His eyes looked glassy now, emotions slipping through cracks he usually kept sealed shut. I'm trying, he whispered again. And suddenly I realized something heartbreaking. He really was trying. Every single day. Trying to fight years of fear. Years of expectations. Years of pretending to be someone else. But trying and succeeding weren't the same thing. I stepped closer carefully and touched his face. I know. His eyes closed instantly at the contact. I know you are. Then don't give up on me. God. I nearly did right there. Nearly stayed. Nearly kept loving him the exact same painful way forever. But then I imagined another year of this. Another year of hidden phone calls. Of being introduced as a friend. Of him flinching in public. Of feeling like a secret every time the world looked at us. And I couldn't do it anymore. Tears burned behind my eyes suddenly. I need someone who can choose me completely, I whispered. Alvin's face crumpled. I do choose you. Not out loud. That silence again. Always silence when the truth got too sharp. I leaned forward and kissed him softly. One last time. And God, he kissed me back like he was trying to hold on to me physically. His hands gripped my waist tightly while he breathed against my mouth shakily. I love you, he whispered desperately. I closed my eyes. I know. Then I pulled away. Alvin looked terrified. Actually terrified. You're really leaving? It wasn't a question. I nodded once because I couldn't trust my voice anymore. He looked completely lost standing there. Like he genuinely didn't know who he was without me anymore. And maybe that was the cruelest part of all this. We loved each other at the wrong time. I walked toward the door slowly while Alvin followed behind me. Jacob. I stopped but didn't turn around. Please don't disappear. My chest tightened painfully. Then quietly I answered. That depends on you. And I left. The next few weeks were horrible. Everything reminded me of him. The gym. My couch. Certain songs. I'd wake up reaching for him before remembering he wasn't there anymore. And Alvin? He texted constantly. At first long emotional paragraphs. Then shorter messages. Then simple things like, miss you. Or, I saw your favorite cereal at the store today and almost bought it. Those messages hurt the worst somehow. Because they felt so normal. So couple-like. Like we were still us. I answered sometimes. Sometimes I ignored him. Mostly because every conversation reopened the wound. Then one night, almost a month after we broke up, there was a knock at my apartment door around midnight. I already knew it was him somehow. When I opened the door, Alvin stood there breathing hard like he'd run upstairs. And for the first time since I'd met him, he looked certain. No panic. No hesitation. Just terrified determination. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I stepped aside automatically. The second the door shut, Alvin looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time in weeks. You cut your hair, he said softly. I touched it awkwardly. Yeah. It looks good. The compliment almost made me emotional immediately. I crossed my arms tightly. What are you doing here? Alvin swallowed hard. Then said the last thing I expected. I told my brother about you. I froze. What? He knows everything. My heart started pounding instantly. Alvin looked nervous now. Actually nervous. I told him I'm in love with you. I stared at him in shock. What happened? At first? He laughed shakily. He thought I was joking. And then? He asked if I was happy. My chest tightened. That's it. Alvin nodded slowly. I said yes. The apartment felt completely silent. Then he added quietly. And then I realized nobody had ever asked me that before. I didn't know what to say. Alvin stepped closer carefully. I was so scared of everybody leaving that I never stopped to think maybe some people wouldn't. Emotion rose hard in my throat. What about your dad? His eyes flicked away briefly. He doesn't know yet. That hurt a little. Alvin noticed immediately. But he will. My heartbeat sped up. I'm done hiding you. The words hit me so hard I almost couldn't breathe. Alvin stepped even closer now. I should have said it sooner. I searched his face carefully. You mean that? Yes. His voice didn't shake this time. I lost you for 1 month and it felt like I couldn't breathe correctly anymore. My chest physically hurt hearing that. I don't care if people look at me differently anymore. He continued quietly. I care if you do. Tears burned behind my eyes again. Alvin reached for my hand slowly. And this time? When our fingers intertwined, he didn't let go.